So it's time for us to go ahead and talk about and compare the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 4 and the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE and see which specific phone is the better one for you. Now, if you're trying to look for the best value per dollar, the S21 FE is probably the better way to go, but honestly, I think a used Galaxy S22 may be the better way to go between all of these. That phone has gone down significantly in the used market, and that may be a better option for some of you. But if you want to pick up either one of these phones, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there. You can help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the outside of both these phones, these two devices are very different from each other. The Galaxy S21 FE on the front has a pretty good 6.4-inch dynamic AMOLED display. It's a 1080p panel, and it's a flat display, so it doesn't fold or anything like that, but it's a pretty good panel. Like, I'm a fan of this specific display. It really didn't look too bad when it first came out, and it still has aged up pretty well. I think the S22s are a little bit better, but this one is still a very good panel for sure. When you look at the Galaxy Z Flip 4 though, with it having a foldable 6.7-inch dynamic AMOLED display, this is a little bit different. It's still 120Hz and it's still a pretty good display, but the issues that we kind of have with this display is that there is a crease in the center, which may not be a big issue for a lot of people, but it is kind of one of those things to keep in mind. It's also a little bit different because you do have a folded display, so sometimes if it's folded, you have that cover display on the front too, so you can use that, which is kind of nice. But I'll say I think I'm still a fan of the, S21 FE, that type of style, but I think foldable phones are here to stay, and I just kind of need to learn to accept and kind of, like that style as well at some point. So in terms of the displays, I think the S21 FE may win. They both have USB-C ports, no expandable storage or anything like that. And on the back, we have frosted glass backs, I guess, on both. The S21 FE has a frosted plastic back, so there's no glass back on the S21 FE. Personally, I think that's kind of okay for a phone like in this price tag. It was supposed to be cheaper than something like an S22, which is understandable. And honestly, these things have gone down to even less than $500 in some places, so that's a pretty good price. With the Z Flip 4 still costing about $1,000, I mean, that's a pretty expensive phone. We also have a dual camera setup on the Z Flip 4. We have a triple camera setup on the S21 FE. We have IP certification on both, which is great. We have wireless charging on both and reverse wireless charging, which is really cool. And I'll definitely say it kind of comes down to whether you like that foldable design or you like that unfolded design, or you somebody who wants to sit there and have to constantly unfold your phone if you want to use it. I know a lot of people who own a Z Flip and they honestly rather just keep their phone unflipped the whole entire time. It's about the same size as a lot of other phones when it's unflipped, so you might as well just go ahead and just unflip it. But I also know a lot of people who have the folds, and very rarely do I see somebody having the fold unfolded every single day, for the whole duration of the day. They usually go from having the cover display on to using it unfolded because it is a really big phone. The Z Flip, on the other hand, not really the case, but I probably wouldn't feel comfortable putting that phone in my pocket. I would just kind of feel like the mechanism would break or something like that. Now, in terms of the cameras, this is a really big thing between these two phones, because the one thing about the Z Flip and Z Fold series, I feel like Samsung could do a much better job at how they're kind of approaching these specific phones. So what I mean by this is, with the Galaxy S21 FE, we have a 12 megapixel wide angle lens, an 8 megapixel telephoto lens, then a 12 megapixel ultra wide sensor. With the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 4, we have a 12 megapixel wide angle lens and a 12 megapixel ultra wide sensor. Now we can do 4K at 60 on the back of both of these, which is great. And on the front, we have a 32 megapixel front facing camera on the S21 FE, which is just too high of a megapixel count in my opinion. We have a 10 megapixel front facing camera on the Z Flip 4. We can do 4K at 30 on both on the front, but the S21 FE can do 4K at 60 on the front, which is so nice. Now, personally, my gripe with the Z Flip and Z Folds is that Samsung just doesn't put the best cameras they have on those phones at that time. They always put down a water type of lens on these devices, and I feel like they could be doing a much better job there. That is pretty much my biggest gripe with Samsung right now with their flips and folds. Even the S21 FE, in my opinion, arguably may have a better camera than the Z Flip 4. I mean, it's missing a telephoto lens, and on top of that, it doesn't even have 4K at 60 on the front. So I feel like between both, you're getting very similar features on both. Like the S21 FE and the Z Flip 4, realistically speaking, whatever features you can do on one, you can pretty much do on the other, which I think is really cool. But as I mentioned, it kind of would have been nicer if we had the capability of having a telephoto lens on the Z Flip 4, or especially if you're spending that much money, I would love to get 8K capability on that phone. Nobody's really going to be getting it or using it that much, but it's still really nice to have. So that is another thing that's kind of annoying, and I personally feel like they could be doing a better job on the flips. So in this case, I would probably say the S21 FE may actually end up having the better camera here between these two phones. Now next up is software and longevity. So because the Z Flip 4, this is the bigger advantage for that type of phone. Because it just came out and because it does have the latest chipset, you're going to be getting a longer lasting phone, both in software but also like performance and hardware and everything from the Z Flip 4 than the S21 FE. So what I mean by that is the FE has a little bit of an older chipset inside. It's not that outdated. It's just the one that came out last year, but you're still going to be getting a longer lasting phone because the Z Flip 4, the chipset it has, just came out. It's a very new chipset for this year, and that phone is probably going to be lasting as long as the S22. I kind of wish Samsung would go ahead and make the flips and the folds last a little bit longer, just because, they are more expensive than their counterparts. So especially with the fold, I feel like they could be doing a much better job there too. But between these two phones, the Z Flip 4 is going to last longer in terms of software, but the S21 FE is still going to be here for a few years. Like, it's not going to be outdated tomorrow. So that's probably another big thing to keep in mind as well. So in terms of software and longevity, that kind of covers it up there. Now in terms of performance, the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE internally had that Qualcomm Snapdragon 888 chipset inside with 6 gigs of RAM on the base model, and it did go up to 8 gigabytes of RAM, where the Galaxy Z Flip 4 has that new Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 chipset inside with 8 gigabytes of RAM on each model. Now I'll start off with the S21 FE. That phone, in my opinion, I had a really good time with that performance. It was a very solid phone. Pretty much everything I threw at it, it handled everything I threw at it perfectly fine. Was it perfect? Probably not. Maybe they could have done a little bit of a better job, with that phone. But realistically speaking, everything I did with this phone was fun, When I was multitasking between applications and doing very basic things and even, kind of standard things, was perfectly fine. But the big thing was the gaming, I feel like this phone did a really good job for pretty much everything I threw at it in terms of a gaming, performance standpoint. The only issue that I even kind of had with the performance standpoint is kind of with the RAM. It's not the most amount of RAM you could get in a phone. And even with phones like the Pixel 6a that have the amount of RAM that phone has, I feel like the Samsung could end up doing a little bit better job with the amount of RAM, especially with the 6a costing way less than this phone. So I feel like the Pixel 6 costs about the same as this thing, and that also has more RAM than this. So I feel like they could be doing a better job there. And that's kind of where the Z Flip 4 is kind of a killer at right now. I mean, this phone has more RAM than the FE, but also has a way better chipset. That chipset apparently is one of the best right now, which is really cool to see. And that is something that I want to keep seeing with all these newer, phones that are going to be coming out. So personally, when you look at something like the, Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 4, when I was playing big games like Genshin Impact and different things like that, this phone did a really good job, which I was really happy about. So in terms of this phone and in terms of, the whole entire gaming performance standpoint, get the thumbs up for me from the Z Flip 4, and that's probably the biggest reason why the Z Flip 4 is a better phone than the, FE, to be honest. And this takes us to the battery life, which is, again, just another advantage for the FE. 3,700 mAh battery on the Z Flip 4, 4,500 mAh battery on the FE. And to be honest, that's a big difference, 800 mAh. And this is another case where you're getting a much better phone and just a much better performing device from something like the FE over the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 4, in my opinion. So in terms of that covers it up there. And this kind of covers up pretty much everything we're kind of talking about, because in my opinion, the Flip 4 is a, good phone, and it's more expensive, but I feel like the FE may be the better one for me, I feel like with the FE, you're getting a good phone for the price tag, you're getting a really good display, better camera on the, FE in my opinion, bigger battery with better battery life on the FE. It's a really good phone and still really good performance. The Z Flip 4, if you like that folding mechanism, then that's great. Still a pretty good camera on this thing. I like the, display and the cover display. I think that's really cool. You have pretty decent, battery life, I would say, whatever, but you have really good performance from the Flip 4, which is really nice. So the choice is yours. I would probably edge for the FE because it is a better value per dollar, but the Z Flip 4, if you have to go pick it up, go for it, but I'd still probably recommend buying like a Galaxy S22 Ultra or an S22 Plus in the used market at this point. So that kind of covers it up. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.